Hey there, can you hear me? Great. Can you give me a thumb up? Awesome. All right, then I will go ahead and get started. All right, so my name is Christopher Cowherd. The resolution we're going to be talking about today is that Walmart has been good for America. I've got two arguments I'm going to discuss. We'll begin by talking about how Walmart has been good for the U.S. economy, and then we're going to look at how Walmart has been good for the middle and lower classes. So we're going to begin by taking a trip to the past. We're going to look at the economic progress this country made in the 1990s. According to the Foundation for Economic Education, it is estimated that Walmart's impact on prices accounted for 12% of the economy's productivity gains in the 1990s, speaking in context of the American economy. Now, 12% is an extraordinarily large influence on national price levels for a single company. How is it possible for Walmart to cause so much growth in the economy? Well, it's because of their profit margins. Walmart's profit margins are between 3 to 4% annually. And if you know anything about business, you know that is an extraordinarily low profit margin. Walmart's business strategy is comparable to moving pennies with a bulldozer. They do not rely on a few high value sales, but rather millions of low value sales to stay profitable. This strategy allows families to purchase goods at a lower price, which results in those families and individuals having more disposable income, which in turn stimulates the economy. As Forbes magazine reports in 2017, quote, Walmart saves a typical American family of four about $2,500 a year. That's about what a family of four gets from the government in food stamps, which makes Walmart a major anti-poverty force in the United States. As additionally, those $2,500 are considered, economically speaking, disposable income, which enters the economy and causes it to grow. So because Walmart has caused the economy to grow tremendously in the past, increases disposable income for millions of individuals, and combats poverty, I believe Walmart has been good for America. Now, we're briefly going to talk about how Walmart has been good for the middle and lower classes through three separate pieces of evidence. First, we're going to talk about donations. The Foundation for Economic Education reports that Walmart runs the largest corporate cash-giving foundation in America. In 2004, Walmart donated over $170 million. More than 90% of those donations went to charities in the communities served by Walmart stores, which is really remarkable for a corporation. Secondly, we're going to talk about wages. According to Business Insider, Walmart pays on average $11.75 an hour, which is far above the minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. And Business Insider also reports that in some areas of the country, a two-wage earner household can live a comfortable middle-class lifestyle with both wage earners working at Walmart. Finally, we're going to talk about employment. Again, from Business Insider, 1.4 million people in America are employed by Walmart, which is a staggering 1% of the United States working population. So since Walmart gives back to the community through donations, pays on average very high wages, and employs millions of Americans, I would argue that the resolution is true, and Walmart has been good for America. Okay, so I see that it's my turn to speak. Joshua, we can't hear you at all. I'm also getting comments from two different people that they can't hear you either, so I'm assuming it's on your end. Um, so I didn't hear any of your arguments from the last speech. Until we get your sound figured out, I'm not really sure how we can progress. Can you indicate that you can hear what I'm saying right now? Okay, perfect. I mean, I'm happy to go back over the material from my first speech, or I can just use my turn to let you try and figure out your sound, and then you can re-give your previous speech. I'm happy to expound on those arguments, but I have no responses to you because I couldn't hear anything you said. Um, so for any adjudicators watching this round, I would just encourage you to flow over my responses from the first and second speech because I heard nothing from my opponent. I would encourage you to take a look at the comment section to corroborate that. We can't hear her at all. So unless my opponent can get her sound fixed, I have no responses to any of the arguments made in the last speech.
Okay, can you hear me now? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay, I didn't do anything to fix it. I don't know why it did that. Okay, well, I guess I guess I'm just out those minutes. I don't really know what to do to do that. So I'm just gonna go through and say what I which is like my statement, I guess. Now the time is running out. I think it was kind of a glitch on the site. Okay, so basically, your main point is that Walmart is good for the economy because cheap stuff equals better for people, but it's actually a lot more complicated than that. And so my three main points are that Walmart is harmful in three ways. First, it displaces US jobs. This is how it's harmful to the economy. Or Walmart's harmful to the economy because it first displaces US jobs and second harms the taxpayers in cities at large. So Walmart's increased trade deficit with China between 2001 and 2013 eliminated 314,000 manufacturing jobs. Manufacturing jobs, as we know, are disproportionately in the lower and middle classes like you talked about, so that addresses your argument there. There's also harm to the taxpayers in cities at large. So several different reports, a congressional report, a report by the Los Angeles City Council. The Los Angeles City Council one is really good in particular for the numbers that Walmart was estimated to cost $9 million in state healthcare costs, and a loss in pensions and retirement benefits so large the increase in public assistance necessary to make up the shortfall could not even be covered by increased sales and property taxes. And I have a lot of other specific examples like that. So that's the first harm. It's bad for the economy. Second harm is Walmart is a bad citizen and creates dangerous norms. So there were over 5,000 worker lawsuits a year for labor violations. That's an average of the past, I think it was 7 years, and the study was done in 2015, for discriminatory practices like lock-ins, firing pregnant women, forcing people to work under dangerous conditions. Walmart is a terrible corporate citizen in so many ways. I'm going to use more of my time later on to talk more about that. But my third point is Walmart is harmful to the environment. So their underlying business model includes several unsustainable features like reliance on energy-intensive 24-hour operations, location of stores outside of urban cores, sourcing at a distance, and expanding retail space. So that is inherently unsustainable. So first of all, Walmart is harmful to the economy. It's a bad corporate citizen, and it's harmful to the environment. I know that you mentioned the charitable giving, but Walmart is right now sitting on about $21 billion in reserves in offshore accounts that it's not paying taxes on. And that kind of makes the $170 million seem like chump change, really, like the greenwash that they normally try to do to make it seem like they're doing something good. Walmart employs 74 lobbyists in Washington and has spent $32 million on lobbying for tax reform in just the past 5 years alone. So it's obviously trying to get.
All right. Thank you for those responses. I'm going to group them and provide a couple of generic responses of my own. So let's talk about your first harm, which was they displace U.S. jobs. I would argue that this is, economically speaking, a logical fallacy. Jobs do not belong in a single location. Jobs are subject to market forces, and if Walmart moves jobs overseas because they're cheaper, they're more effective, that's not wrong. That's just a way that they stay competitive. And in a market economy, which is what the United States has, those people who are quote unquote displaced have the opportunity to go and seek employment elsewhere. My second response is this actually multiplies the economic impact, because as China outsources jobs or globalizes jobs, they save money. And saving money allows them to bring prices lower for the consumers, which in turn benefits the economy. Now, your second argument was that they harm the taxpayers, and you talked about they need public assistance to survive. I'm not really sure where that evidence came from, but if you discount the United States military, the Walmart is the most successful, largest corporation in this country. I don't think they need public assistance for much of anything. They make on average $9 billion a year in profit. They're economically speaking doing extraordinarily well, and I don't see how they're harming the taxpayers in that respect. You then talked about how they're a bad citizen with 5,000 labor lawsuits and firing pregnant women and other things like that. As a student of the law, my question would be, how many of those lawsuits were successful? 5,000 lawsuits does not mean anything unless any of those lawsuits went to court and were actually litigated in favor of the litigant. 5,000 lawsuits is actually not an impactful statistic unless you can demonstrate that there was some actual harm and that the court saw that harm and awarded damages to the person bringing the lawsuit. Now, let's talk about your third argument, which was that Walmart harms the environment. You mentioned, talked about kind of some generic environmental problems that they've caused, and then you also talked about how their donations are not largely impactful. My first response is that you have no impacts to their environmental damage. My question would be, how many bald eagles have they killed? How many salamanders have they exterminated? That kind of thing. Because you have no impacts, you have no way to demonstrate how bad the environmental damage actually was. The second response would be that this is a non-unique argument, that every company, every corporation damages the environment in some way. But if I can demonstrate that Walmart has benefited the United States economy more than they have damaged it, then the resolution is still true. Finally, you talked about their donations and said that with the offshore accounts and assets they're sitting on, that they're chump change. Statistics I mentioned in my first speech, which said that they lead the United States in corporate donations. They are the most generous corporation in this country, and I do not think that can be overlooked. I would argue that when you weigh your arguments against the evidence I presented in my first speech, that Walmart is on average more beneficial than it is harmful.
Okay, so I'm glad that this is working now, by the way. Makes it a lot easier. Okay, so your first, just to address all of the things that you had said before, you started off by saying if Walmart moves jobs, that's not wrong, but it is bad for the United States. If Walmart is moving jobs, manufacturing jobs to China, and are manufactured in China rather than products that are manufactured in the United States, that's wrong on a couple of levels because it displaces US jobs. Therefore, it's bad for the US, which is what the resolution says. And it's also bad in terms of transport costs and carbon footprint. I'm not even getting into the argument that there's just a bunch of cheap plastic junk that nobody really needs. That is sold, but I think that that's kind of relevant. Also, I think you misunderstood the argument. I didn't say that Walmart needs public assistance to survive, but that their employees need public assistance to survive. And that's what the Los Angeles City Council found, is that Walmart pays their employees on average. I think that the statistic from another different study is 18% lower than other comparable stores in the same area. And because of that, the people have a job, but they don't have a job that makes them enough money to survive and live. And so they have to be on food stamps. I have actual statistics for this that I can try to look up. I'll try to get them more handy for my next speech, actually. But that's a huge harm, is that Walmart is basically outsourcing its healthcare costs to the US government. They're getting all of the benefits of somebody's labor without paying that person a wage where they can actually make ends meet just on that Walmart money. I know that you gave the statistic about the $11 an hour, but it's been shown over and over again in tons of different studies, that one in Wisconsin, the Los Angeles City Council one that I mentioned, and another one in Ohio, where Walmart employees actually are on public assistance. A lot of them are. So then this idea of the lawsuits, how many of them did they win? The people that sued Walmart won a substantial portion of these lawsuits, most notably the one for polluting, where Walmart was fined over $100 million for violating environmental regulations. And a lot of these lawsuits they weren't just OSHA things, they were violating environmental regulations, violating building codes. A substantial portion of those lawsuits were won. However, I don't really necessarily think that that's even relevant, because Walmart has so much more money to be able to fight these lawsuits. And so if it's, in one instance, it was a group of employees that were literally locked in a Walmart store. Walmart has more access to money. They can pay for better lawyers, and they ended up winning that lawsuit, even though they admitted that they did lock the employees in, which is, of course, totally wrong. So your argument that Walmart is the most generous company, I don't really think that that holds any water, because just because they're the company that's giving the most doesn't mean that that's good. If they're giving something, I think it's to impact their public image and not actually impact any community. There is no net good of Walmart given all these things that I've discussed.
All right, so let's take a look at your arguments 1 through 4. Let's start with this argument that they're bad for the U.S. You argue that they displace U.S. jobs, and that when you factor in things like transportation costs and carbon footprint, that they are not net beneficial. This argument that displacing U.S. jobs is bad for the United States is frankly economically illiterate. When countries globalize and put jobs overseas, that enables them to their products at lower prices to the economy. It is undeniably true that globalization results in greater profit, which results in greater economic activity. Because we live in a market economy, these people can go and find jobs elsewhere. Just because they're displaced does not mean that they're permanently unemployed. In fact, even if they are unemployed, the benefit of the lowered prices and economic activity that results from that globalization outweighs their unemployment. Now, in response to your second argument, that the majority of Walmart's employees need public assistance, I didn't see any actual evidence backing this up, but I would again refer you to Business Insider when they mentioned that Walmart on average pays far above minimum wage. $11.75 an hour, I believe, is a specific figure. And I also point out that Business Insider noted that in some areas of the country, if a married family, both of whom work at Walmart, making $11.75 an hour, can live a comfortable middle-class lifestyle just by working at Walmart. Now, you also argue that they are outsourcing some of their healthcare costs to the United States government. My response is that this is a non-unique argument. Every company is trying to take advantage of public healthcare, because when you get the government involved in healthcare, it allows people to exploit it like this. This is not a problem that is unique to Walmart. It's a problem that's unique to government healthcare. Now, you talked about, you said that a substantial amounts of these lawsuits, these suits against Walmart were won, and in particular mentioned a couple, I believe I heard one specific lawsuit that was won where they had to pay $100 million in damages. So I would challenge this argument that a majority of these lawsuits were won. If you want to argue that Walmart is a bad corporate citizen and that they are losing suits in court, you have to tell me how many suits they're losing. You can't just make that claim without backing it up. Secondly, Walmart losing a single lawsuit is completely meaningless. Corporations lose lawsuits all the time. This happened to be a particularly big lawsuit in terms of the monetary payout. But if you want to as truly a bad corporate citizen, you have to be able to demonstrate that they are getting sued a lot, and that a lot of those suits are making it to court, and that they are losing the vast majority of those suits. That's the way you can empirically prove that. Then he talked about their donations and said that just because Walmart is beating everyone in the United States, that does not mean that they're necessarily good. I would agree. Walmart may very well have bad intentions with their donations, but you cannot disagree with the monetary impact of their donations. They're beating every other corporation in the United States and the amount of money that they donate to the communities that they service. Even if they are selfishly motivated by doing that, they are still benefiting the economy, and they are still benefiting the people that live in these communities, which means that even if they're being a selfish corporation, they're still helping people, and that's good.
Okay, so here are some statistics for you. So you were wondering about the Walmart employees on public assistance. 15% of Walmart employees in Ohio use food stamps. According to, including food stamps, Walmart workers at a single store consume around $1 million in public each year. I have a couple of different sources from all kinds of different things that are different statistics, but notably, and I'll post them in the bottom of the debate, that one was from, I think, a study by the United Food and Commercial Workers Union. There was also an article in The Economist, again, the Los Angeles City Council, a congressional report. Walmart employees are using public assistance. It's a fact, they are. And so one article from Business Insider saying that a couple can live on $2 $11 an hour salaries, I don't think is very impactful when the real world evidence shows the opposite, that actually in practice, people are getting this public assistance, rather than your article, which says they could live on that. It's in practice, they are not. Then we go to the idea of Walmart being a bad corporate citizen. So Walmart has been shown to drive down the wages of other comparable jobs, which is another argument that you didn't address. I don't agree with you that I have to show a number of lawsuits that were that were won to show that Walmart is a net good. If somebody is suing you 5,000 times, that's probably bad. Walmart has more lawsuits than Target and Costco by a margin of many thousands. So I think that that's a pretty solid way of knowing that they're doing these bad practices. I didn't have enough time to dig into the research for too many more things beyond that. You haven't really addressed this argument of environmental harm. I don't really understand what a non-unique argument means. So as far as I can tell, your argument is don't hate the player, hate the game. Like Walmart is just a company. They're just trying to do the best they can. All business is going to cause harm. But doesn't that mean that Walmart is not good for the US if you're admitting that they all are going to cause harm? So I would say that the resolution fails kind of just on that alone. So there's this idea that Walmart has displaced US jobs. Walmart is not a good corporate citizen, and Walmart is bad for the environment. I feel like all of these are very minimally addressed. If I could sum up your arguments once again, it would basically be all companies do this. It doesn't matter why they're doing it. It's fine. And I don't quite understand that argument, frankly. If Walmart is polluting, has shown to be polluting, that's a net bad. If Walmart does engage in these harmful business practices, that's a net bad. If Walmart, its employees are getting food stamps, that's a net bad. So hopefully you can address these things in your final turn.
We're going to address them, and we're also going to turn them and illustrate how all of your arguments actually. So let's start with statistics. You talked about how 15% of employees in a store in Ohio used food stamps, and you talked about another store where they consumed $1 million in public benefits. I have two responses to this. First of all, we're going to use the term non-unique again. Non-unique means that the argument does not apply specifically to the resolution. Poor people use food stamps, and poor people use public assistance. Walmart tries to hire poor people, and the reason is you don't have to pay them very much because they're not doing a very difficult job. Bagging groceries is not that hard. In fact, what this does is it illustrates that Walmart helps people that need help. Poor people need jobs, and I would rather them have a job where they get paid something and still need some government benefits than they have exclusively government have to pay more taxes for them. So that actually demonstrates that Walmart is net beneficial to this country. Now, let's talk about this argument around the lawsuits. You said that since Walmart is getting sued 5,000 times a year, or whatever, that means that they're clearly doing something wrong, and that they have more lawsuits than Target and Costco. First of all, this argument that they have more lawsuits than Target and Costco, legally speaking, is meaningless because Walmart is bigger, vastly bigger than Target and Costco. So it would follow that they would have more lawsuits than Target and Costco. They reach 97% of the people in this country, which means they're going to have a lot of lawsuits. But secondly, this argument that because they have 5,000 lawsuits means they're doing something bad, that is a legally inaccurate argument. Corporations get sued all the time because people are looking to make a fast dollar. And just because a corporation gets sued a lot does not mean they're doing something bad. The only way you can illustrate effectively that they're doing something bad is if you can tell me how many of those lawsuits went to court and the litigants were awarded damages. That is the only way you can demonstrate that. And so far in the round, we've only seen one example of that. Now, we'll wrap up by talking about your arguments around the environment. You basically said that Walmart is in fact harming the environment and that concedes that they're not good for the US. I've got a couple responses to this. First of all, your argument has no substance behind it. I don't know how many species they've exterminated, how many wildfires they've started, how many rainforests they've mowed down. We have utterly no specifics. Every company in this country harms the environment in some way. You harm the environment when you drive to work every day. The question is of cost-benefit analysis. Is the cost of harming the environment greater than the benefit of whatever this company is doing? And I would argue in every case, yes, it is. Walmart is objectively good for the economy because it provides people with greater disposable income. It gives jobs to poor people. They donate money to the community. They do all of these good things. You're arguing because you haven't demonstrated how they harm the economy, bad things they're doing, and you also haven't illustrated why they aren't helping poor people. All the empirics I gave you in my first speech, which talked about how have been dropped, and as a result, I believe that it is clear that Walmart does benefit.
Okay, so I would say I didn't drop the arguments about how they helped poor people because I would more say that they just don't help poor people. I think you're trying to argue that they help poor people by giving them a job, but they have the statistic that I mentioned that you didn't address is that Walmart pays on average 18% lower than comparable jobs in the area, and they depress wages within the area. So if Walmart is hiring poor people, and that's your excuse for why these people are getting food stamps, maybe the people wouldn't need food stamps if they were getting paid more than Walmart is paying them, which seems to make a little bit more sense. I don't really see any net gains for poor people that you've shown other than things are cheaper at Walmart. But Walmart was actually rated by Consumer Reports as the very bottom, like last grocery store or that people want to shop at. So people don't even really want to go there. They're only there because it's like that's the only thing in their town, that Walmart has closed all the other stores, basically. I just tried to Google Walmart lawsuits paid out, and I'm going to post it because here, I'll just read it right now. This will actually maybe make kind of a nice closing to everything. There are every single Google one. I was trying to just get a number, but it's Walmart settles for $150 million. Walmart settles for $200 million. Walmart settles for $60 million. Walmart settles for $6 million. It's pages and pages and pages of these lawsuits. So once again, I know I was at a serious disadvantage of this debate because of the technical difficulties. So I hope I was able to make that up with a lot less time to speak.
Fair enough. All right, so I want to talk about the three most important issues of the round. We're going to talk about the environment, we're going to talk about helping the poor, and we're going to talk about the litigation. So we'll start with harming the environment. I would argue that judges, you should not be concerned about voting on this issue of the environment. My opponent continues to argue that Walmart somehow, in some mythical manner, hurts the environment without offering a single specific example of what they've actually done that hurts the environment. On the analysis, I win because that Walmart helps the economy more than it hurts the environment, just by virtue of the fact that we have no specific examples of how they actually hurt the environment. On the second issue of helping the poor, my opponent's only argument is that because Walmart employees still use government benefits, they aren't entirely independent, that Walmart doesn't help the poor. This is problematic because all it does is illustrate that Walmart actually seeks out and hires poor people. And in comparison, I would rather a poor person have a low-paying job at Walmart and still be dependent on some form of government benefits than to have no job and be entirely dependent on government benefits. Again, if we're talking about the greater good to America, you want the poor to have jobs at Walmart. The third argument is this issue of litigation, that Walmart is up to something nefarious because they have all these lawsuits. Again, I don't care how many headlines you can read on Google for payouts, unless you can provide me with specific examples. The majority of their cases going to court have been litigated in favor of the individuals bringing a lawsuit against Walmart. You cannot conclusively demonstrate that Walmart is doing something bad. At the end of the day, the resolution asks the question whether or not Walmart has been good for America. The answer is clear. If you look at what is good for the economy, lowered prices, which increases the amount of money in the economy, and if you look at the payout and the donations for the lower class, Walmart